Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas here on France 24. I'm Delano de Souza, and coming up on the show this week, the far-right candidate in Brazil vows to place the country above all, Jair Bolsonaro vowing not to change his tone before the second round of the vote at the end of the month. Venezuela faces international calls for a transparent investigation into the death of Fernando Alban. The Venezuelan government insists he threw himself from the 10th floor of the state intelligence headquarters, a claim the opposition denies. And residents on an island in Louisiana are set to become the United States' first climate refugees. The population will be rehoused to a town nearby over the next 4 years. But first, the far-right candidate in Brazil has vowed to place the country above all, this as Jair Bolsonaro goes head-to-head with the left's Fernando Haddad in the second round of the election on the 28th of October. Bolsonaro's policies have been controversial, but he says he won't be changing his tone just to win more votes. Alexander Orcott takes a look at what he's promising for Brazil.
On the rare occasions that Jair Bolsonaro spoke in public since being stabbed on the campaign trail, it's usually been to attack the left, and particularly the Workers' Party that won the last 4 elections.
Brazil cannot continue on a socialist path. We won't become tomorrow what Venezuela is today.
The imprisonment of former Workers' Party President Lula da Silva for graft has shaken up this year's vote, and Bolsonaro has made the fight against corruption a top priority, to the delight of his supporters.
We have a big problem in Brazil, which is called corruption. Jair Bolsonaro is the only one going against it.
Supporters also believe he could be the antidote needed to reverse a violent crime wave that's brought close to 64,000 deaths in 2017, the most of any country in the world. The former army captain, who's spoken nostalgically of the years Brazil was under military dictatorship, has proposed to boost the armed forces, reduce the age of criminal responsibility from 18 to 16, bring back the death penalty, and ease gun controls.
We're not going to reduce violence with flowers. Let's be clear, guns don't create violence and flowers don't create peace.
On the economic front, Bolsonaro has vowed to privatize or even shut down state-owned companies as he tries to deal with mounting debt and one of the worst recessions Latin America's largest economy has seen in years. He's also teamed up with a respected neoliberal economist Paulo Guedes and promised further sweeping reforms, although details remain hazy. Nonetheless, his first-round victory sent stock markets soaring.
There is a lot of optimism in the market because a great number of those working in finance vote and are sympathizers of Jair Bolsonaro. That could be clouding the sight of some investors. Why do I say that? Because up to now we have very little information about what Bolsonaro and Paulo Guedes want to do.
The candidate has also pledged to slash the size of the state, reducing the cabinet to just 15 ministries and simplify the tax code. On the environment, he wants a radical shift and plans to merge the environment and agriculture ministries and exit from the 2015 Paris Agreement, a measure that has environmentalists up in arms. His intention to return to so-called traditional values has also drawn strong criticism. He's spoken out against causes including same-sex marriage, abortion, immigration and affirmative action. He's further angered women in particular by making light of rape and saying companies should have the right to turn away female job applicants if they feel they're likely to become pregnant.
Now, Fernando Haddad, the man handpicked by jailed former President Lula da Silva, is promising a tough fight. He trailed in the first round of the vote despite the popularity of his mentor Lula da Silva. The campaign showcased how a vote for him was a vote for Lula. To our number of the week next, and it's 488.8%. Yes, you read it right. That's the inflation rate in Venezuela over the past 12 months. That figure, according to the opposition-ruled Congress. Venezuela has the world's largest known oil reserves, but has been in economic freefall due to financial mismanagement, which has resulted in food and medicine shortages. Now, the opposition in Venezuela honored Fernando Alban following his death. The 52-year-old lawmaker died while in pre-trial detention. The Venezuelan government insists he threw himself from the 10th floor of the state intelligence headquarters, a theory the opposition denies. Wasim Cornet reports.
Wrapped in Venezuela's red, blue, and yellow flag, the coffin of Fernando Alban rests in the capital, Caracas. Mourners by the dozens paid their last tributes to the 56-year-old councilman who died on Monday. The coffin was placed in the country's legislature, which is the seat of the opposition majority National Assembly. Fernando Alban, a city council member for the capital Caracas, was arrested last week by police. He was accused of taking part in the failed drone attack against President Maduro last August. According to Venezuela's Attorney General, Alban requested permission to go to the restroom while he was in custody and then threw himself out of a 10th floor window. His friends and colleagues, though, say that version is hard to believe.
Fernando did not commit suicide. He was a man of faith. Fernando always spoke about life. He knew that life was given by God. He would never commit suicide.
The death has sparked concern from the United Nations and the European Union. Both bodies called for a probe into Alban's death. Venezuelan opposition member Enrique Capriles told mourners the suicide allegations add insult to injury.
In addition to the economic and social tragedy that the vast majority of Venezuelans are going through, look at where we are now, mourning a colleague who was thrown from the 10th floor of the police building, and the government's claiming it was a suicide.
Alban was among at least 24 people arrested in connection with the incident involving 2 drones. President Nicolas Maduro has called the event a failed assassination attempt, but opponents continue to say the twin blasts were orchestrated by the government.
Brett Kavanaugh has taken his seat as a justice on the U.S. Supreme Court despite numerous accusations of sexual misconduct. At a ceremonial swearing-in ceremony at the White House, Donald Trump apologized to the judge on behalf of the nation for the pain he endured before his confirmation. To the U.S. state of Louisiana next, where residents of an island are set to become the United States' first climate refugees. Due to rising sea levels, the Île de Jean-Charles is rapidly vanishing. Land has been chosen some 50 kilometers away to build a new town. The population is set to be rehoused there over the next 4 years. But not everyone is happy with the decision, as Ellen Gainsford now explains.
This precarious causeway is the only way to reach the Île de Jean-Charles, an island in the Gulf of Mexico that's slowly sinking into the sea. Jonathan Parfait grew up here, and with each year that passes, he's watching it disappear.
This was all land at one time. This bayou here was big enough for this boat to fit in. And this was about, let's say, 20 years ago.
Today, the Île de Jean-Charles has lost more than 90% of its surface area.
It's sad at times to know that where you grew up, born and raised, and your family lived, that it's not going to be there in a few years, you know. Every house had people in it.
"400 people used to live here. Now, many houses are abandoned. Those that remain are on stilts to protect them from the rising water. The island has been battered by one hurricane after another. Sam Bentley has been studying erosion in Louisiana for over a decade.
These, probably within the last 20, 30 years, would have been a living oak forest. Now the land has sunk low enough so that salt water has moved in and killed the trees, and we call it a ghost forest. Under more stormy conditions, the entire island can be inundated by surge, so it's simply not a safe place to be.
Faced with the island's inevitable destruction, Louisiana's local government is organizing a resettlement plan. They're going to reconstruct the town 50 kilometers away. The plan is to evacuate the residents within the next 4 years. It's the first time that erosion has caused the evacuation of a whole town in the U.S.
They're going to be some of the first climate refugees that are going to be relocated due to climate change, sea level rise, and land loss.
But some residents are determined to stay. Edison Dada has already rebuilt his house 3 times. His son has bought him a lifeboat capsule so he can shelter if there's another hurricane. A final port in the storm as his home slips into the sea.
And finally, authorities in Colombia have launched a campaign to discourage tourists from feeding pigeons in one of Bogotá's most iconic locations. Recently, a group of government workers walked around the square dressed as pigeons as thousands of real birds swarmed overhead. Officials believe that if people stop feeding the pigeons, they will stop congregating in public squares where their droppings destroy historical buildings and put people's health at risk. That's it for this edition. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.
Across Africa, presented by Georgia Calvin-Smith.
From North to South Africa, from Bamako to Nairobi, from Accra to Mogadishu. Bringing you all the political, economic, cultural and social news from Africa for a better insight into an ever-changing continent.
Across Africa on France 24 and France24.com.